Singapore hammered home the point of how it consistently carried out activities and maintained public works in Pedra Branca since the 1800s till today, and so it argued that this is a clear display of a state authority exercising its sovereignty over the island. These were the points made by Singapore's international counsel, Rodman Bundy, when he began on the third day of hearing at the International Court of Justice. Channel News Asia's Mia Wong reports from The Hague.
In fact, Mr. Bundy said that Singapore built facilities like crew quarters, the Horsburgh Lighthouse, and in 1977 even installed military communications equipment on Pedra Branca. He said Malaysia never displayed any reaction to all these works being done on the island. He also cited how in 1974, Malaysian officials actually sought permission from Singapore to visit Pedra Branca to carry out some scientific studies. This, Mr. Bundy said, attests to Singapore acting in a sovereign capacity for Pedra Branca. Singapore's own government officials, such as ministers, also made visits to the island without seeking permission to do so because they didn't have to. Malaysia never once protested this. Speaking in French, Professor Alain Pellet also cited more evidence to support Mr. Bundy's arguments. Professor Pellet pointed out that Malaysia's non-objection and own actions, in fact, show that they were convinced then that Singapore had sovereignty over Pedra Branca. And one example that Professor Pellet cited, in 1980, Malaysia sent a note to Singapore requesting for approval to lay a power cable between Indonesia and Malaysia in the territorial waters of Singapore. And the territorial waters that I'm talking about now is that of Pedra Branca. So Singapore has, over the course of some 160 years, carried out sovereign activities on Pedra Branca, confirming its title of the island. And this is a clear contrast to Malaysia that cannot seem to point to a single act of administration and control over the island. Malaysia's failure to do so represents a fundamental defect in its case to claim sovereignty over Pedra Branca, argued Ms. Loretta Melantopi, another foreign counsel for Singapore. Ms. Melantopi, without mincing her words, said that based on all the facts, the conclusion must be that Pedra Branca is and has been subject to the territorial sovereignty of Singapore.
The fragmented and vague activities that Malaysia uses to support its claim are so remarkably thin and unpersuasive that they do not rise to the level of effectivity on Pedra Branca and cannot, a fortiori, be confirmatory of any title to the island.
On Friday, the three speakers from today will continue to defend Singapore's ownership of the island and its outcrops. And then all eyes will certainly be on Singapore's Deputy Prime Minister and Law Minister S. Jayakumar, who will sum up the first round of the nation's oral presentation.
The panel of 16 judges will deliberate at the close of the hearing. The decision will be made by majority vote. The judgment, which is final and without appeal, will be read out in court. The outcome of this case is expected to be announced in about 6 to 9 months.